Hi. Hi.
They'll make something work. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Let's just open that up to make sure it's good. And then shift this over, but okay. And then does that thing work? I don't know if it's gonna work.
Goes forward.
Is that not working? Or you know what?
Oh, we gotta plug this one in.
So you have two of them. Okay, so that's what he was saying. So that
Yeah.
should work.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
We're good?
Beautiful.
All right.
You want to just stand up here and you introduce me?
Yeah. I'll just want to make sure we get more person.
Hi. Hi.
Microphone work for you?
Perfect.
All right, everyone, thanks for coming. It's my good friend Jake, and we're gonna do he's gonna do a PowerPoint, maybe 35, 40 minutes. Then the rest of it, bring in all the questions you have, anywhere from golf to overall fitness, anything you really have. So we'll spend a lot more time on the Q&A. That sounds about right?
Yeah.
40 minutes,
I'm
maybe?
gonna kind of structure it and then allow you guys to come in with any questions. So I'll talk for a minute. I'll ask you if you have any questions. I'll talk again. And then if we find an area of interest, we'll kind of dig down there. Okay? So my name is Jacob Ziemer. I'm a performance coach, which really means once upon a time I was a personal trainer, and then I kind of grew, and I have a degree in nutrition, continued to grow, and now I have a large-scale coaching business where I help people primarily lose weight. And that's kind of the focus of what I do. I help people lose weight. I help people kind of optimize their health, and that is the major focus of what I do with clients, whether it was in person or it's remotely. And the majority of my business at this point is remote. So what we're going to kind of be talking about today is fueling your body. We'll talk about quick eats, and that can be anything like restaurants, etc. Training for health and performance, additional testing, and recovery. So I'll give you a really, really quick synopsis of my life. I was born in Portville, New York, population of 959 people. I was the first college graduate in my family. I begrudgingly moved to New York City because my girlfriend convinced me to. She got a job at KPMG. She's now a partner there. It was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, meeting her and getting dragged to New York City. I started off as a trainer at Equinox. I did that for a couple of years, and then I eventually took the clients, moved to a boutique studio where I trained people, and then COVID happened, and for the first time I was like, oh, people aren't just calling me nonstop for business. And so at that time, I was reached out to someone who had a startup called Get Verb, which was a way to kind of structure coaching clients and allow me to have an omni-channel and to work with people at a higher level. And I kept pushing the guy off. I was like, I don't need to do that. I'm so busy with personal training. This doesn't make any sense. So what ended up happening is I got on Instagram, which I hated Instagram. In 2018, I posted 2 things on Instagram. They were my dog. And in 2019, I posted once on Instagram, and it was my dog. In 2020, now since then, I posted like 700 times, and every single thing on there has been nutrition related or training related. So very much videos about like how to navigate the grocery store, helping people understand things like Norwegian salmon, helping people understand the power of berries and antioxidants and fiber, et cetera, et cetera. And so now that is very much what I do full time. I create content and I help people get in the best shape of their life. So starting off, and then I'll kind of guys through this, and then I'll open up for questions on each slide. So nutrition is everything. When we talk about whether it's losing weight, whether we're talking about health, or whether we're even talking about performing better on and off the green, nutrition is top of mind. That is the single most important thing. And within that, the single most important thing from a nutrition aspect is portion size. Why do I say that? Because the #1 correlation with heart disease, which is the leading cause of death in the United States of America, is your BMI. So the #1 correlation with heart disease is obesity. The #1 correlation with all symptoms cancer is obesity. The #1 correlation with diabetes is obesity. So simply cleaning up the size of the portions that you eat is paramount to your health. Many times when I work with people, just getting them to simply eat a little bit less and getting them to lower the scale will allow things like cholesterol, triglycerides, all of those markers to improve. And all of those things are correlated with a longer life. So the first and foremost thing where people make a mistake is simply how much calories they're eating in a day and having no realization of that. Because things like a Caesar salad, which you would think, oh, this is good for me, has 720 calories, whereas like a classic American cheeseburger has approximately the same amount of calories. So it's kind of a bummer to realize when you're going out to dinner and you order the Caesar salad, you pretty much were on par with having a cheeseburger that evening. And most of that is because of the dressing, clearly, right? Like the dressing and the way it's made, it's very egg heavy, it's cream heavy. That is why. Value of protein. Single second most important thing that you can look at when you're talking about nutrition is getting adequate protein consumption. And so that's going to be for most people somewhere around 0.6 to 0.8 times their body weight. And again, that depends on how active you are, how muscular you are, and what your goals are. But protein has a lot of benefits, first and foremost because of composition. So when we talk about composition and we talk about things like weight, there's different ways that people look. I am 240 pounds. Technically, I have a BMI of 36, which would mean that I'm morbidly obese. That's not the case because I have very low body fat. And as a reality of that, protein plays a factor in building muscle. So also, protein is highly thermogenic, which simply means that it's very filling. So one of the most important considerations is how much you eat, and then secondly, what you're eating, and I would start at like a macro level first. So you've probably heard that term before, like macronutrients, like carbs, fats, right, protein. Protein is probably the single most important macronutrient. And then secondly, the importance of fiber. Every 10 grams of fiber daily decreases all symptoms mortality by 10%. So I'm going to break this down for you. We'll have some questions, and I want to make it a little simpler. But by eating 10 grams of fiber daily, and that could come from things like fruit, vegetables, those are a massive source of fiber, that is going to reduce your risk of, again, heart disease, a symptom of mortality, right? It's going to reduce your risk of all symptoms cancer. It's going to reduce your risk of diabetes. It's going to reduce your blood pressure. It's going to help improve your triglycerides. It's going to help improve your cholesterol, which is what drives down those markers. So when I deal with someone, the first thing we talk about is how much are they eating and getting them to have a sense of the total portion size that they're eating. And then secondly, getting them to be aware of how much protein they actually have in their diet, followed by how much fiber they have in their diet. And then hydration is a massive factor. So somewhere around 0.8 times your body weight in ounces of water. So if I weighed 200 pounds, I would want to be having approximately 160 ounces of water a day. And that's pivotal for performance, and that's also, again, pivotal for health markers. So I know I threw a lot at you, but this is kind of where I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions directly related to nutrition.
0.8, is that what you said?
0.8 times your body weight in water, yeah. So again, if I weighed 100 pounds, I'd want to have 80 ounces of water a day, right? So that's about 2/3 of a gallon of water. So for a good marker for most of you, having a gallon of water a day would be excellent, right?
And the 6.6 to 0.8 protein to body weight, that's a pretty, somewhat of a wide range. How do you determine that? And that's in grams, is that right?
That is correct. And so people will commonly tell you to have 1 gram of protein per pound, and they tell you that respectfully because people are dumb. So it's really easy for people to remember 1 gram of protein multiplied your body weight. It's a simplification. Nobody really can utilize 1 gram. I don't need to eat 240 grams of protein a day even for myself. So 0.6, obviously, if I'm 200 pounds, that's 120 grams. If I weigh 100 pounds, that's 60 grams of protein. Why would I choose that over the other? First of all, if I had a relatively sedentary human being, I'd probably opt for like 0.6. And again, it's very filling. Protein, so when you talk about protein, protein either has to be utilized by your body to repair muscle, skin, hair, or it has to go through a process which it has to convert to glucose. And so it causes it to actually burn calories when eating it. So it's a simplification, but when you have protein, your body's either going to utilize it for good stuff or it's going to burn some of it in order to use it as fuel. Whereas all the other macronutrients, unfortunately, we know fat is how that's stored in our body. Carbohydrates is stored as like glycogen in our muscle cells. So protein has an additional action where either it's utilized or some of it's burned off, right? If I was very active, I would do 0.8 times my body weight. But again, the benefit of it is that it's very satiating and that it also is thermogenic, right?
What about fat and
Healthy fats.
keto and that kind of stuff? How does that play?
Sure. So when you talk about fats, there's two major fats that we talk about, right? Which are saturated fats, which when you traditionally think about it are like steak, right? Chicken, and that's somewhat of a simplification because you can even have very fatty turkey, right? If you've ever looked at a package, you know it has a fraction on there and it says like 90-10. That's how much fat or how much lean meat is on there to fat. So 90-10, for example, turkey, that's 90% lean and it's 10% fat. 85-15 ground beef, that's 85% lean, it's 15% fat. So when you pick those fattier meats, they have more saturated fat in them. And when you talk about like monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fats, which are the other real block of fats, those are things that are actually going to help your cholesterol. So we call those like PUFAs and MUFAs, and those things come from like avocado, salmon, olive oil, nuts and seeds. And those fats actually will help your health markers. Saturated fat, you want to reduce in your diet as much as possible. Does that make sense?
So you sit down and you look at a menu. How would you rank in terms of best proteins to worst?
So if I looked at a menu, like if I'm at a restaurant or just in general in life. So if I looked at, let's just say in general, I go to the grocery store and I'm looking to select proteins, right? The most important thing to understand is that most proteins are absorbed by your body, regardless the source. So once upon a time, this is going to be a technical term, but we used to be concerned about bioavailability of protein. I just threw a huge word at you guys, but in terms of like pea protein wouldn't be able to be utilized as much as whey protein, or like protein from an animal wouldn't be able to be utilized or would be able to be utilized better than protein from a vegetable, right? Have you heard that conversation before? Sure. More and more we're learning about it. Pea protein is great for actually building muscle. It seems like bioavailability of protein is a non-issue. You can be a vegetarian and a vegan. There might be some other concerns with doing it, like B12 or other vitamin deficiencies, but you could have a vegan diet and still get adequate protein needs met. So if I was to look at options that are really good for protein, I would think chicken, I would think turkey, I would think seafood, I would think cottage cheese, I would think Greek yogurt, I would think whey protein, options like that. Eggs, egg whites, those are all excellent options for protein. So. The number one thing that I think people drastically underestimate is how much food they're eating, especially when out. So to give you an example, if I went out to a restaurant and I had a steak, it's probably going to have 3 times as many calories than if I were to eat it at home. As an example, a sirloin steak, like a 6-ounce sirloin steak, it's about 250 calories. When you look at menus like franchise menus where they're forced to put the calories in, like if you went to Houston or if you went to Applebee's, it's going to be closer to 750 calories. Why? Because it's just dosed in butter. I was telling the story earlier. I have a client who's the head chef of Catch. So Catch in the city, they have Catch Steak, now Catch in Aspen, Catch in LA. And the head chef lost 110 pounds with me. And when I came in to see, he wanted to make me dinner. I came in and he showed me after they cook a steak, what they do is they take out a sheet pan of butter and they literally take the steak, they dip it in, then they put it on top, and then they garnish it and they send it out. And that's the major reason. And I think that's for most people, most of the clients I work with, is just one, simply underestimating what they're doing day to day, but then also two, when going out to dinner, just not understanding that it's very easy to sit down at dinner and eat 2,000 calories. And the reality is most of us, that's what we need in a day, let alone. For example, if you sat down and you got the Caesar salad and you split it, you're each having 350 calories. Say you get the steak, now you're having 700 calories. You just had 1,000 calories. Say you get 2 tequilas, now you're at 1,200 calories. Say you get dessert, you're at 1,600 calories. Yeah, and this is the major mistake that people make, and which is why we talked about earlier, is one of the things I see that people do incorrectly is they will start their day off, like you said, like a big breakfast, and then eating a little at night. Diets fail in the evening. They just do, for everyone, regardless how, I mean, most people would see me as like the picture of discipline, but the hardest time for me to follow my diet is at night, right? I come home, we have a 3-year-old, she wants to, she's not finishing her pasta, there are peas. The pasta is so much better than the food I'm eating because my wife cooked it and it's got butter on it. So, you have to say no to the kids' food, and then you get through that trap, and then the refrigerator's sitting there staring at you, and there's popcorn, and there's ice cream, and of course we have this stuff there because I have a 3-year-old, so this stuff's there. So that's the real area where people make or break their diet. Or the second scenario is you get done with a long day and you simply do not want to cook for yourself. So now you order in Thai food and it's covered in cream sauce and it's been cooked in butter. And those are the major places where people fail their diet is in the evening. So I think that's the major pitfall for most people. And so really for most people, I would say coming up with a strategy around like 3 o'clock of like, how do I not walk through the door absolutely ravenous, right, is key to being successful with any kind of implementation of nutrition. So again, the Caesar salad versus the classic cheeseburger, even more shocking like a blueberry muffin, right? You think a blueberry muffin is perfectly fine. A blueberry muffin is around 600 calories. A glazed donut is around 160 calories. Blueberry muffin has a blueberry muffin. I'm taking Dunkin' Donuts as an example, but it extends to all of them. Blueberry muffin has 49 grams of sugar. Okay, that's more than you should have in an entire day. A glazed donut has closer to 15 grams of sugar. Even a Bavarian cream, so you see this thing and it's chocolate on top, it's got Boston cream in the middle, you think this thing's gotta be, it's about half as much sugar as a blueberry muffin. So many of the things that were kind of ingrained, and I tell people this all the time, and it's very important for people to understand, like, there's a vast difference between healthy and weight loss. Now, if you are at a low weight, a BMI, right, that is healthy, but the idea like avocado, excellent for you, but very caloric. Now, I'm not telling you not to eat avocado, I'm just telling you to be aware, like, the biggest kiss of death is olive oil, right? When you take that and you just do this, that's 400 calories. Like when you just go like this, I mean, take out a tablespoon, measure a tablespoon, put it in there, measure another tablespoon, put it on there, and that's a amazing healthy fat. But if you're already overweight to begin with, the number one thing you do again is drop your BMI and then start to think about those things. So it's a very easy way. People, and I'm Italian, so I grew up with a very heavy hand with the oil, but that is an easy way to really stack it. So that's kind of a start. So I guess what I'd probably like to do, because I think some of this stuff is really high up there, just give you some very simple actionables for yourself, and then I'll take some more questions and we'll move on. First thing I would say to you is looking at something like breakfast, I would really try to optimize some form of protein and find something that you actually enjoy. That's a great option, would be something like Greek yogurt, making a smoothie, and then finding something like berries. Berries are a phenomenal source of fiber. They're extremely high. 1 cup of berries is 4 grams of fiber. Everybody should be trying to get 30 grams, 40 grams of fiber daily. Most Americans only get 15 grams of fiber. Again, remember, every 10 grams of fiber decreases all symptoms mortality by 10%. And the driving factor of that is, and by the way, that's a meta-analysis study. That's not one random study that said that. It's a meta-analysis. They compiled over 100 studies on fiber and found that that was the effect, that it reduces your chance of heart disease. It reduces your chance of all symptoms cancer. So starting off and just picking like something like a fruit, like bananas, apples, pears, something like that to start your day, and finding a protein source and one that's sustainable. I usually tell people to think, when you think about dieting, the biggest mistake is people focus on perfection. When people go and they go to purchase a car, right? You go and maybe your child just turned 16. And so you go to the dealership and you're like, hey, I'm looking for a Jeep, okay? When people approach dieting, they go to the car dealership and they're like, I want a Ferrari. And the person's like, no. And then they're like, okay, well, I'll ride my bike. That is literally how it's an all or nothing decision. And really the biggest thing that you want to look for is like, what can I do day in, day out that you can find? So I look for protein and some sort of fiber to start. I would look for the same thing. Like I tell people all the time, like pick an area where you can order in from if you're working. That's easy for you can get the meal consistently. And then think about things like sauce on the side and looking for some veggies and some protein in there. And then think about that 3 o'clock snack, because I think the biggest mistake again is when you walk through the door and you're extremely hungry, that's where people screw up the most. So having some sort of afternoon snack, whether that's a protein bar, whether that's a packet of almonds, coming home, having dinner, which most people are very successful with, and then meaning that most people in here are probably having a nice dinner when they get home, something that's healthy. And then having a clear-cut window where you stop eating. I eat between 6 and 6, right? Those are my feeding windows. That's completely arbitrary. Don't get caught up in the times I said, but it might be a good habit for you to say, I eat from 8 to 8, and I just simply stop eating after that time. I'm not telling you if there's a special occasion, you can't go out to dinner with your friends. Don't hear me. Just day in and day out, having set times and kind of that standard is very effective for people to kind of toe the line. Any questions? So, training for health and performance. So when we talk about measurable things, VO2 max. So VO2 max is where you put a mask on and you can either run on a treadmill, or you can get on an assault bike, or you can even get on a cycle. This is your #1 correlation for vitality, meaning how long you'll live. It is how your body processes oxygen. So your VO2 max score, it's something that you should consider getting tested. They also call it, so performance centers will call it a VO2 max, hospitals will call it a stress test. So if you've already had some form of heart disease, they'll put you on there, they'll have you run, and they'll have you do a stress test. It's the exact same thing. When you get done with the stress test, at the end it will say what your VO2 max is. And so that is a key indicator of your life expectancy, what your VO2 max score is. I just had it done about 2 weeks ago. We shot it as content, and my VO2 max was 52, which is in the superior range. So probably somewhere you want it to be in the 40s or beyond. People who are, now the fact that I had a 52 does not mean I'm gonna beat Lance Armstrong at a bicycle race, but it means that my body does a great job of dealing with oxygen and the way I process it. And again, the #1 killer, the #1 cause of death is heart disease, right? Resting heart rate, these things are amazing. The Apple Watch, I have the Ultra, any form that you have, Whoop, something like that. I love the new Ultra because it has a ton of heart rate data on it. If I have a heart attack, this will call 911 for me. If I get into a car accident, it will call 911 for me. I have it set up. You can set it up that if your heart rate spikes too high, it will call 911 for you. You can set it up that it will call a loved one for you if it consensus that you're in a collision. So I think this is absolutely phenomenal, but it also gives me my resting heart rate, and it's only off by about 1%. So it's such a narrow margin that it's very, very effective. I have a resting heart rate of 54. You want your resting heart rate to be under 90. It's a massive drop off for people who have a resting heart rate under 90, and it's another massive drop off for people who have a resting heart rate under 70. They live much longer lives. So that's your #2 correlation to a long life. Your third correlation to a long life is what's called your lipid panels, right? So when you go to see your doctor, at least annually, you should be getting blood work done. If you are over 30, you should be getting your blood work done at least annually. If you're over 40, you should be getting it done twice a year. Within that, they'll do a comprehensive metabolic panel. Within that, they'll do your lipid profile. And within your lipid profile are things like your cholesterol, which LDL is a massive indicator of your lifespan. Like, is your LDL where it should be? Is it within range? And then there's some other things like alpha lipoprotein, for example, C-reactive protein, but your LDL is significant to your lifespan, triglycerides. So getting those lab reports done annually is extremely important, and I would tell all of you, like, if you're not getting your blood work done annually, make sure you have. If you have not had a coronary calcium scan in the last 10 years, go do it. If you know that you have high cholesterol and you have not had a coronary calcium scan done, go do it. A coronary calcium scan is where they go and they look at the plaque buildup throughout your body, and you get a score, and your score should ideally be 0. It should definitely be under 200, And if you are listening to me right now, it was worth you showing up tonight alone if you have not had a coronary health scan done. It's where I send clients to all the time to get it done, and it's not spoken enough with your doctor. It is not covered by insurance. It is still listed as an experimental surgery or experimental scan. It doesn't matter. It's just American health insurance. It's nonsense. Everybody knows that it's an effective indication of viewing plaque, but it's $140. And it's $140 that will save your life. And you will have an indication of how much plaque buildup you have in your heart and of atherosclerosis. Weight training for BMI, zone 2 cardio. So when we talked about your VO2 max, so I'm suggesting that you at some point go and look at getting that done. Depending on your score, the number one way that you can help with cardiac, both cardiac performance like resting heart rate and your VO2 max is zone 2 cardio. Is anybody familiar with what that is? Okay. So there are different zones. Again, like this will show me what my heart rate is. Zone 2 cardio is where your heart rate is between 110 and 135 beats per minute. And when you're doing cardio, the single most efficient thing that you can do is keeping your heart rate between that zone. So again, I don't work for Apple, so I know I'm giving them a big pitch here, but I would really suggest go get some sort of wearable and trackable. They're not accurate at all with calorie burn, but everybody, Fitbit, Whoop, they're all very close on the heart rate zone. And if you can keep your heart rate between 100 and 130 beats per minute, by the way, that's not difficult to do. I can literally get on a conference call, talk to someone who works for me. I can literally talk to coaching clients and I'm walking on the treadmill and I can keep my heart rate 120 and I'm not out of breath at all. That is the best way to reduce your resting heart rate. That is the best way to improve your VO2 max. Matter of fact, I even have clients where they're runners. I had a client named Run with Don on Instagram. Run with Don has the world record for the most miles ran in 24 hours. Client of mine, he did 127 miles in 24 hours, and 80% of his cardio is in zone 2. Most of the athletes these days are doing what's called low heart rate training the majority of the time, and other times they're pushing themselves. So again, if you think you're doing cardio and you want to take care of yourself, knowing where your heart rate is while you're doing it will optimize it. Everybody here, I'm sure, is extremely busy, but if you take the time to make sure that your heart rate is staying between 110 and 130 beats per minute, your cardio will be way more efficient and will benefit you way more.
How long do you do that for?
The recommendation of the American Heart Rate Association is 150 minutes a week. So, a week.
One session.
They typically say to break that up between 3 and 4 sessions. So, as an example, this week I've done 2 40-minute sessions where my heart rate was 120 the entire time. Now, again, it's 110 to 130 beats per minute. Some of these things that I'm telling you, and I'm saying against you again, like they really are the cheat codes. Like coronary calcium scan, you're familiar with it, we spoke about it, but it's so pivotal that people get that done. It's just, it's something that's underlooked, it's not talked about enough. Getting your labs done annually, it's so incredibly important. I know people get nervous about these things, but if you know what's going on, you can usually correct the course, right? And
Is that zone 2 age dependent or fitness dependent?
so, correct, but the zone that I gave you, that 110 to 130, probably everybody falls in there. So again, my VO2 max was 52, and my resting heart rate, I go into zone 3 a little sooner than other people, but I believe the number they gave me was 105 to 130.
So on treadmills, let's say zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right?
Don't trust that.
Okay.
Don't
So
trust that.
is zone 3, zone 4 harmful?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, if I had a client, so I had a client who we just went through their program, they were doing 20 miles total running, and 15, so 80% of it, it was closer to 16 of the miles were low heart rate training. Like I said, 80%. Your other should be in that zone, right? So if you were doing 80% of your cardio, you could do the rest of it as intense cardio. Like when you go do Peloton. If any of you guys ever do Peloton, that is very intense cardio, and it's great, but again, zone 2 is actually way more beneficial for recovery, and it's way more beneficial for health markers. Doing like very anaerobic training, it's great for performance, but it's not going to have as big of an impact on your health benefits. And that's really primarily what I would talk to you guys about first and foremost. Like probably no one here is a competitive cyclist or a competitive sprinter. And so if you're looking at purely like what can you do more efficiently when you don't have a lot of time, if you got on your treadmill and you made sure that your heart rate was between that 110 and 130, that's what you can do that will have the biggest impact on your health in terms of doing cardio.
So those HIIT workouts aren't as beneficial as zone two, right?
No, they're not. They're not. And again, but listen, and this is the most important thing about any of this, is simply doing something is so much more important than doing nothing. And I've seen that time and time again. Like, I've been pretty involved in this field for the last 7 years, education directly in it. I have over 13 certifications. I was like top 25 at Equinox. Now, like, I mean, I was on News 12 today. Now I'm doing this speaking event. I have to fly out next week for like a major podcast. Like, so, you know, I will tell you that the biggest thing that I have learned, and when we look at research, like, for example, to build muscle, maybe I have to do somewhere between like 15 really hard sets on a particular muscle group a week. So think about it like doing chest press. I might have to do 15 really hard sets, 10 to 15 really hard sets. To maintain it, what we've seen is somewhere around 25% the volume. So I hear people all the time, they're like, oh, I had a busy week, so I didn't work out. Listen, take an hour, take a half an hour somewhere. Something is better than nothing, especially when it even comes to maintaining. I think, again, the biggest thing that stops people from achieving what they want is they see it as this all or nothing concept, where instead you really want to see it more of like a budget. Like, if you go out tonight and you spend $3,000, that's very different than if you go out tonight and spend $300, right? I grew up in a very small town, Portville, New York, and I work now primarily in Larchmont. And when I moved there first, I'm like, why are these people they work at a private equity fund. Why are they driving a RAV4? Made no sense. And then I got into a higher tax bracket, and then I understood, like, okay, like time value of money and these things. And then I realized what they do. It's the same thing with dieting. Just apply that same principle. You're really just looking where can you cut the margins, right? Like, you can have a slice of pizza. That's perfectly fine. But if you have 3 slices of pizza, that's 900 calories, and you're never going to burn off 900 calories, right? If you worked out hard for an hour, you might burn off 200 calories. You're not going to work out for 4 hours, right? And that's really what the game is figuring out, like, how do I get in activity? How do I make it as consequential as possible in the time that I have? And that's why I tell you again, like, if you have a half an hour, I know Peloton's telling you, like, drive, you're better off keeping your heart rate between that 110, 130 beats per minute, especially for when it comes to like health factors, right? When we talk about weight training for BMI and performance, so if you think about body fat percentile, right? It's a numerator and it's a denominator, okay? I know I'm throwing numbers at you here, but numerator and denominator. And so what's a factor in that? It's your total amount of fat on your body and then your absolute weight, okay? And so how do we drive down that percentile? Well, we could lose fat, right? That would lower our body fat percentile. What's the other thing we can do with the denominator? Increase it, and we do that by building muscle, because that's the only way that you can create the denominator without also increasing the numerator, right? So building muscle, and that's why when we talk about BMI, the single most important thing you can do to have a good body fat percentile is weight train. And that's probably ideally a good place to start is 2 hours a week of doing some sort of weight training, right? And that will actually improve your BMI. And when we look at people even versus like endurance athletes versus people who weight train have better BMIs. And the major reason, again, is because they build muscle. And as you age, one of the key tests for how long you will live is your grip strength. And they do this because it's pretty generic, like, you know, having somebody bench press or things like that. There's other conflicting things along with that. But anybody can grip an object firmly. And that is a huge indicator of lifespan. So again, weight training suggestion, 2 hours a week. Cardio suggestion, somewhere around 150 minutes in that zone 2 a week. If you do not have time for that, again, it's not as efficient, but 75 minutes of intense cardio. So if you got on your Peloton and you did 40 minutes twice a week, again, maybe not as great, but don't get caught up in suboptimal, get caught up in actually doing something. That's very effective for cardio health.
Jay, can you talk about the importance of flexibility in terms of being able to execute as you get older?
Yeah, mobility. Yeah, it's funny. They really have this shift in the industry where people used to talk about flexibility, and now everybody like me, we're all talking about mobility instead. It's really the same thing. Mobility is your ability to get from point A to point B. And so things like hip mobility, incredibly important. And believe it or not, one of the best things that you can do for mobility is weight training. So even just the activation of doing like an RDL for like my hip mobility. Can I push my hips back, right? Can I squat? I should really take a chance here with these dress pants. But being able to get down nice, yeah, get down. Everything I have to get is custom, so that is a real risk going down there. But being able to be mobile and move in that positions, believe it or not, weight training through full range of motion is actually on par with stretching for increasing mobility. And one of the things I would usually tell people is I see people and they weight train, and you know, Anthony and I were talking about this, like 95%, 99% of what you see in the weight room is just so incredibly wrong, because people will try to load up too much weight as opposed to really thinking about a full range of motion. So like when I squat all the way down, or I squat as low as I can without pain, and then I progress from there. And that's the best way that you can both increase musculature, at the same time increase mobility, and at the same time you're increasing your strength. And so weight training is a phenomenal way to do that. And then if something is, and this happens very commonly, people have things, especially here, like golfer's elbow, right? Where you'll get really tight through here, or tennis elbow when it's, tennis elbow on the outside, golfer's elbow on the inside, or people get very tight hip flexors. That's when you want to stretch. When something starts to get tight like that as a result of you training, or as a result of you playing golf. Muscle does one thing and one thing only, it contracts. So if I use my muscles, they contract. The only way I'm going to open that up is through stretching them. But really, stretching is like a secondary thing. It's really something you do to treat if something's tight. Like notoriously, people get very tight hip flexors and they think that they have back pain, and stretching your hip flexor is one of the best ways to alleviate that. So additional testing, again, annual blood work. It's the single most important thing you can do for your health, is being able to catch things early. If your glucose is high, that's an indication that you're pre-diabetic. If your bun ratio, if your creatinine levels are high, that's an indication that something's going on with your kidneys. I've notoriously had high AST and ALT. I know I'm throwing these abbreviations at you, but I had notoriously high AST and ALT, and I talked to my doctor, why do you think my liver enzymes are high? And it probably came up for close to 2 years. And the conversation was, well, you train very intensely, so you're probably breaking down a lot of muscle and coming back thin, so I don't leave things to chance. I think you have to advocate for yourself. And so I had the conversation that I wanted to get a sonogram of my liver. I went and got a sonogram of my liver, and it came back. I would tell you, and not to scare you, but in today's world where with the state of things, you have to manage your health. You have to, my girlfriend begged me to get rid of that picture, by the way, but we'll go back to it in a second. You have to advocate for your health. So if you see something like your cholesterol is high 2 times, do not assume that your doctor is picking that up, right? I've even said, I have sent a ton of people to a concierge service in Westchester. They're phenomenally good. They're experts in cholesterol. And twice in a row, I had a client and their cholesterol is high. And so we talked about putting him on a statin. They agreed to do it. His next test came back with high cholesterol. And I said, Joey, are you on the statin? And he goes, oh, they never prescribed it. And I had to email the guy and say, can you please prescribe this client? And this is true. And it's just, and again, you're doing so many things. You're so busy. You have kids, you have a career, yada, yada, yada. You're not thinking about it. But the number one thing is really, I would tell you, if something is coming back, make sure that your doctor goes through your blood work with you and has a conversation with you about it. You know, and I hope most of you at this point, you have something like my charts for the doctor you go see, because then you have a direct line to your doctor. And if you don't, you should talk to him about it or consider moving. And I mean that. I'm not trying to be like, make you guys afraid, but the reality is it's very easy. The doctors are seeing a tremendous amount of patients in order to make money these days. So just being aware that you're going to have to advocate for yourself. After COVID, I had came in and I asked for my annual EKG. I always pushed for it. They always said I was young, but it's a small test. I think it cost me like $40 with my health insurance. And I was AFib. And it was very common after COVID. A lot of people were AFib, which causes blood clotting. So I usually have a very low heart rate. I didn't even notice that I was AFib because my heart rate was at 54, 54, 80. 54, 50. So my heart rate's always low, and then it went to a normal person's heart rate, right? So somebody who's out of shape, maybe their heart rate's 80, 80, 110, so they'd feel the jump. I didn't feel the jump. So we talked about it. They wanted to put me on medication. I did it for a few months. I was still on medication. I said, what can we do here? I went in, they did a cardio version. My heart has been back in the 54s ever since. So I just would tell you that there are numerous times that I've had to advocate for clients, and I don't pretend to be a doctor, not when I'm speaking here, not when I'm on Instagram, but I do ask people to go have conversations with their doctor or go find the right person to have those conversations with, because again, you have to advocate for your health. And I would tell all of you, make sure you're getting your blood work done annually, at least annually, and talking to your doctor about it. Coronary calcium, we talked about sleep apnea. This is the silent killer. If you snore, if your partner snores, and here's why I would define snoring. Snoring is louder than a conversation. So if you're talking and you're having a conversation with somebody like this and your partner is snoring louder than that, chances are they have sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is going to increase blood pressure, it's going to lower testosterone, it's going to put you at major risk for heart disease. So if you are snoring, and ask your partner, am I snoring louder than a conversation? Can you hear me when you close the door? Can you hear me in the other room when I'm snoring? You may have sleep apnea. So I have my story. I grew up, my mom was 15 when she became pregnant with me. My dad was an alcoholic. I was the first college graduate in my family, and every decision I make in my life at this point really has two major factors, which is, one, does it help people, and two, am I compensated for my time, right? The third factor sometimes, not always, is do I like it, right? Sometimes I do things I don't like, but in general, I try to like everything I do. And I tell you that story because even tonight when I come here, overarching, I think some of the things I'm telling you are very, very important. And my primary concern is, will this actually help you guys? And sleep apnea, I'm telling you, the coronary calcium scan, that blood work, and sleep apnea. Ask your partner, are you snoring? And if you are, go get a sleep study done. There's increasingly more and more options. There used to be this thing called a CPAP. It's freaking horrible, but they're coming out with more and more options outside of CPAPs to help people. I had a surgery done. They hardened the soft palate of my mouth, and it significantly reduced my snoring. I went from, I had mild sleep apnea to no sleep apnea. So there are options out there, and I would just tell you, go ahead. All the options. So when you talk about, when you talk about, I had a surgery done, it was I mean, I literally went in and they drilled like 3 holes in my mouth and I couldn't eat for 4 hours. So, but then there are more serious ones like a deviated septum. That's a very complicated surgery. A soft palate, the surgery I referred to, I walked into there, walked out, my friend drove me home, and it was very easy. There are other options like CPAPs. CPAPs I hate because there's very little compliance to them, but they're increasingly coming out with more, and thank God for capitalism because it looks like they're coming out with options that are non-CPAP related. And so again though, I would go get that data. If you're snoring, ask your partner and then go look. But there are other options. The number one option to fixing sleep apnea is losing weight. 9 times out of 10, if you lose weight, you stop snoring. So for me, that wasn't as much an option. I wanted to stay jacked. But I was like, okay, what else can we do to fix this problem? So, right? But that is the number one thing you can do is drop weight. Or, again, get the sleep study done. See how serious it is. You might be snoring and you might only have mild apnea. You might be snoring lightly and you might have severe apnea. Severe apnea is life-threatening. You know, when people fall asleep at night, they wake up the next morning dead, it's sleep apnea or it's an aneurysm. So, endocrine system, I was asked, does our metabolism slow down as we age? And the more research we have is that our metabolism actually doesn't slow down until about our 60s. So that's actually like how many calories we naturally burn. But what does change is our hormonal system, whether that's menopause, whether that's males and our testosterone lowering. I would suggest to you that you get your blood work looked at and look at things that you can do around that. Again, the number one thing you can do for most of these things is weight loss. Keeping your BMI low will help improve your testosterone levels. But again, going and having those additional labs done, especially when you hit 40, ask to have your testosterone looked at. If you're a woman and you're going through what you think is menopause, ask, go and look, have your prolactin looked at, have your estrogen done. I get on calls with people sometimes and like, I think I'm going through menopause. I'm like, what do you think? Like, go talk to your doctor, run the test, let's see where you're at. So I just want to kind of draw attention to endocrine The more we know low testosterone, it has a direct correlation with prostate cancer. It has a direct correlation with heart disease. And there are things you can do. There's things besides even testosterone replacement. There's things like clomiphene, which is a pill, and you take that for a few months and it temporarily reboosts your testosterone, and your testosterone will stay higher from it. It's simply a pill, and you take the pill and your testosterone increases and you're back to a better baseline. Any questions? Okay, again, my girlfriend begged me to take down this picture. Michelle, who works for me, helps me make all the slides, and she's like, this is a weird picture. I'm like, people are obsessed with cold plunges right now, so let's just go with it. Supplementation. So people talk about, this is me jumping in a cold plunge, so it's very, very cold. Supplementation, when we talk about what supplements you can take, most people are properly hydrated. Electrolytes are like all the rave right now. They may or may not be necessary. It just depends on you and knowing yourself and if you're feeling any of the symptoms like cramping, etc. Creatine is extremely effective. Creatine monohydrate. People think that creatine is something, it's not, like it's a performance enhancer or something like that. The reason for that is when Congress pulled Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa in, they said we're on creatine, and so every mom in America was scared to death that creatine was a steroid. The truth was that Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa were taking steroids. They weren't just taking creatine. But creatine is a substrate of an amino acid called arginine, and it's very effective. We're actually increasingly giving it to geriatric population, and people in general benefit both in muscular performance and strength, so from taking creatine. Caffeine is an incredibly effective supplement, probably not necessary every day, but we see extreme performance and extreme attention benefits from taking caffeine. Manual therapy, massage, right? So if you have an area that is sore, like massage, acupuncture, foam rolling, all these things, most of the studies that we have done on foam rolling, I don't know, Anthony, do you push people to foam roll?
Here and there.
Yeah, and so some people, like, you just get very tight in particular places. Most of the studies we have for them, they involved little mice. So they injured these little mice, and then they used these heavy metal implements on them, and they said, oh, this breaks up scar tissue. What we know about any sort of manual therapy, whether it's massage, whether it's any kind of foam rolling, is it brings blood flow to the area. And it does have an impact and helps people feel better where they ache. So it's something to consider doing, especially if you have pain somewhere. Manual therapy, like, again, if you have pain in your forearms, if you feel very tight throughout your shoulders, if you're limited in thoracic mobility. Very important if you're a golfer, right? Your ability to rotate your spine without rotating your hips. Thoracic mobility, it might be that you actually have a tight pec, things like that. So manual therapy, extremely important. Everybody is talking about hot and cold treatment. I'll just go into it briefly. Sauna is insanely good for you. Phenomenal for you. It should be broken up into 2 or 3 times a week, a total of about 50 minutes. Insane health benefits. I mean, for blood pressure, believe it or not, short-term, getting into a sauna is the #1 thing that you can do outside of some sort of medication or dietary change, is the #1 thing you can do for blood pressure. So again, 2 to 3 sessions. I do 20 minutes 3 times a week in the sauna. You want your temperature somewhere above 170 degrees, and incredibly good for health markers. Drives down blood pressure, helps with cholesterol.
Any difference between wet and dry saunas? Or
So like red light saunas and things like this. It's funny you say that, because when saunas originally came out, they came out with these red light saunas, and I was like, this is going to be, BS. I was so determined, I don't really vocalize my opinion until I see the data, but in my head, when CBD came out, I was like, this is going to be crap, and it turns out CBD is actually really effective anti-inflammatory. And the same thing is true with red light sauna. Actually, red light saunas are really effective. So both a traditional sauna, I like the traditional sauna. We have one at our house. They gave me one for free because I have an Instagram following, so that's partly why I like it. But then the other part is it's just so relaxing. You go in the sauna, it's a nice. But the red light saunas are very effective. So the dry ones are equally effective, and they're very easy to get, but yes. Cold treatment, unless you're an endurance runner, unless you are an athlete and you need to be able to perform. That was the original iteration of cold treatment. I'm just answering this because everybody's so obsessed with it right now. But like, if you played baseball and you have to play 3 games in a week, and you're sore, you get in there so you reduce soreness. Some of the parts about being sore from working out is good for you. It actually, some of that inflammatory response is what actually helps you improve being a better athlete. So we call it like metabolites, and that's like lactic acid accruement, that soreness. So when you get into a cold plunge, it actually reduces that. So there may be some health benefits to it. Let's give it a couple of years. But as of right now, that's like America's new darling. I'm like, people are telling me they did a 5-minute cold plunge and acting like they exercised. I was like, okay, guys. I was like, that's not really constitutes exercising. A hot tub? It's not hot enough of a temperature. I love jacuzzis and things like that, but it's not as effective as a sauna. Yeah, and the same thing is true with the steam room, unfortunately. I know people, but the temperature, it really has to get to like that 170 degrees. I love jacuzzis. I was kind of bummed too that it wasn't as helpful as a sauna, and I kind of made the switch. Like I used to work out and then I'd get in the jacuzzi afterwards. I just get in the sauna now. So rest and recovery. Everyone should be getting 7 hours of sleep a night. That is the recommendation for adults. Again, if you have some sort of issue with your sleep, I would highly suggest chasing after it. The more and more that we know about sleep, the more and more vital it is for our health. And then just in terms of like recovery as a whole, again, the recommendations for activity, somewhere between 150 minutes of moderate cardio a week in that zone 2 or 75 minutes of intense cardio a week, and somewhere around 2 weight training sessions a week is ideal. That's it. So what questions can I answer for you guys? Do you have any questions?
What are the incrementals? I mean, I'm older, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are the incremental steps you would recommend, digesting your information to just live healthier?
Sure. Number one thing I would say to take away from here, first and foremost, is get your labs done annually. Start there for everybody. If you have not had your labs done in the last year, go do them. All right? That's your number one, because first and foremost, you have to be alive. Okay? 2, second biggest thing I would do is if you had not had a coronary calcium scan in the last 10 years, go get a coronary calcium scan. Very important. You can see the plaque buildup. The number one cause of death is heart disease, right? That's first and foremost. Third thing I would do is I would try to find a regiment where you're doing cardio. You can look at me. You probably know that I spent some time in the weight room, right? So most people, they always think that I'm going to so heavily push weight training. It's more important that you do cardiovascular activity than it is that you weight train. I'm not telling you that weight training doesn't have a factor, but again, the number one cause of death in the United States of America is atherosclerosis. It's heart disease. So I would tell you, find time on your calendar to work out. And I would put on your calendar like anything else. And one of the easiest ways you could do it, if you have to take a call and you don't have to speak on it, but you just have to listen onto the call, again, you're not going to be padding for breath when you're doing this. I do things where I'll either listen to a podcast. I called my sister Jane today while I was on there. My sister Jane is like completely different than I am. She lives in Pennsylvania. She has a job as a consultant in San Francisco. So she makes like San Francisco pay, but she lives in this like incredibly small town in Pennsylvania and has a barn and has like turkeys and all this stuff. And I talked to her for like 40 minutes while I was on there. So I try to like put things on there that I can bucket off at the same time, use your time efficiently. Because again, when you're doing zone 2, you can completely hold a conversation, or you can read, or you can do anything you want to do. And so I would suggest finding time on your schedule. 150 minutes is a lot of time, right? But 90 minutes is better than nothing. Find time and put that on the calendar. That is a very incremental thing that you can definitely do. Weight training twice a week, probably lower on the preference, but very important that you do that, because as we age, you want to have muscle. Muscle is very metabolic. My resting metabolic rate, that means how many calories I burn without moving at all, is 4,350 calories. So I can eat 4,350 calories in a day, and that will just sustain my weight before I've done any activity. Why? Because I have a lot of muscle on me. And obviously, but these are incremental things. If you think about more like progression, you having muscle on you is vital for you and your metabolism. So weight training and just obviously aging well, being strong is going to help you. I have a client, he's one of the original contractors for Walmart. I pretty much only do semi-privates at this point. And I see Norm one-on-one once a week because I just love that man. He's been with me from the beginning, and he's just an incredible human being. and I just enjoy talking to him. We laugh a lot. But I tell Norm all the time, like, he has very tight adductors through here. He has some hamstring stuff. And I told him, like, your downfall, besides anything else, may very well be that at some point you break your hip. And what happens, like my grandmother, she lived to be 98. She broke her toe. She went from, sitting at I remember I asked her to get up to come down for Christmas. And I said, Mom, do you need my help? She stood right up. I don't need your help. And when she broke her toe, she went from that woman to, I just want to die, because she was sedentary in old age. And I tell you that because strength training is so vital. When I see Norm, like, I give him stuff to do on and out besides seeing me, because it's really pivotal to him having a long life. Because if that happens to him, he's going to get sedentary. It's going to fade very quickly. So I would say those are very simple things. And then from a dietary perspective, try to get more fiber in your diet. It's very easy to track your calories. I know nobody wants to do this stuff, but download something like MyFitnessPal or that, and just put a day of what you eat in there. Put it in and kind of look at where you shake out, and look at kind of what you ate and where your fiber came out to, where did your protein come out to. That'll give you a pretty good indication of, like, hey, how am I doing at this? And I will tell you, start to look for things with fiber. Really like a cheat list for fiber. Fruit, veggies, selenium husk. Has anyone ever heard of selenium husk? You should put that down. If you're taking notes, put down selenium husk. Selenium husk is a seed. It's a powder. They come in capsules. And these about 2 tablespoons is about 14 grams of fiber, and it's 30 calories. And originally when selenium husk came out, people were like, it's insoluble fiber, that won't help. That's nonsense. It's actually incredibly vital. It drops cholesterol. 20 grams of selenium husk reduces cholesterol by 25%. So if you want to walk out with a very simple, actionable, if I were you today and I said, I spent this hour with this guy, I would walk out of here about blood work. I would walk out of here about sleep apnea. I would walk out of here about coronary calcium scan. I would walk out of here with selenium husk. I would walk out of here with zone 2. Those are, so now I'm like, everybody's shaking their head a little bit. So now you see the value in coming here today. But in all seriousness, those are 5 things that just alone are worth your time being here this evening, because those are such huge hacks for living a longer life. So buying selenium husk, go buy the capsules. You can get them right on Amazon. Pop 3 capsules in the morning, pop 3 capsules in the afternoon. You've automatically bumped your fiber up to like 18 grams a day just doing that. And then this is simple advice, and I know we all know it, the 5 fruits, 5 vegetables a day. I get it, it's played out, but think about it this way. Every meal you have, try to have a fruit with it, or try to have a couple vegetables with it. So when you have dinner, try to have a couple cups of broccoli with dinner. When you have lunch, try to have a couple carrots. I do not count lettuce. Okay, lettuce is so low calorically, right? Like that entire bag of lettuce that you see, it's like 30 calories. There's no fiber in that. But carrots, throw your carrots in there. Throw some cucumbers in your salad. So try to have a fruit or vegetable with every single meal. That's another way. So if I was to look at it just from a dietary perspective, selenium husk and adding some sort of fruit or vegetable with every single meal will help you start to bulk up. And then just being conscious of your protein. Just be aware of it. Again, if you were to track or test it and look at it, I know once upon a time protein was like a meathead concept, but really in this day and age, again, like building muscle is very much a full-time job. Like I have clients come to me all the time and they want to put on muscle, and it's really a very, very conscious effort to do that. If I looked at somebody and I said, realistically, how much muscle could you put on a year? Someone at my stage, I'm not trying to be more muscular, but if I was trying, I might be able to put on 3 pounds of muscle, and it would require me to weight train 6 hours a week at vigorous intensity. Like when I train, I look like my eyes are gonna pop out of my head, right? I pick a number and I say, I'm gonna get that number or this is it. And I mean that, I train with that level of intensity. That's why I'm built like this. For you guys, obviously you're not, but I say that just more to say, like, when you go to the gym, like it takes a concerted effort to build muscle. So I think thinking about things like protein, that's really your best way to increasing how much muscle you have. So those are my major actionables that I would say. The other thing I would say to you too is when you go out to dinner, ask yourself if it's a special occasion. And really ask yourself that. Like, okay, I'm out to dinner tonight. I've been out to dinner 4 times this week. Where all 4 times of those special occasions, because that happens. It does. I had to go out to, I have my sister-in-law's wedding is Friday. Tomorrow night, I got dragged. I'm so annoyed. I have to go to dinner with two friends, and I love these two friends. I'm on camera, but I love these two friends. But the reality of it is like I just had last night we had to go into the city. Tonight I'm here, so I'm going to be very tired by the time Friday rolls around. And so when I'm out to dinner tomorrow night, I'm just going to order a petite fillet, and I'm going to have some oysters, and just keep it very low calorically. So I would think about that and like how often are you eating out? And then ask yourself, is this actually a special occasion? And then the moments in life that you cherish with those you love, like don't think about it, but really like how often should that happen? Maybe once every 10 days, you know, twice a month, 3 times a month. I'm not telling you not to enjoy yourself. And I think the other thing I would think about too is having something in your diet, especially if you're looking to try to lose weight, having something in your diet every single day you enjoy. There aren't magic foods, right? Like if I ate a Reese's Pieces cup right now, that my body would be like, nope, you can't lose weight today, right? There's no magic food. It's just portion of a diet. So I have something every day that I kind of like. And that could be like Yasso ice cream bars. They're Greek yogurt ice cream bars. They taste absolutely amazing. Yasso, phenomenally good. I have like one of those every single night. I think another thing, if I'm just trying to give you like something to think about perspective-wise, understand that your diet doesn't restart at midnight. And I think a lot of people are under that illusion, because that's why a lot of people come up with this concept of I'll start on Monday. It rolls over. It's like a bank account. If you go out and you spend $3,000 on dinner tonight, that comes in and it's still there when you wake up at 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock the next morning. And I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'll start tomorrow. The people who are successful, you're just always playing the margins, and you're always like, oh, how do I minimize here? And you have to have moments that you enjoy, but again, like when I have moments that I enjoy them, but I don't go crazy because I know it's going to extend into a longer period of time. So I think thinking about like, hey, this is rolling into each and every day, highly important.
Vitamin recommendations?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. I would tell you on your labs, get your vitamins looked at as well. But primarily, they're going to look at your vitamin D. Most Americans, about 70% of Americans, have a vitamin D deficiency, and vitamin D is massively important to a number of factors. So looking at that, very important, and it's very easy to supplement for. I take 10,000 IUs of vitamin D every single day, but vitamin D is something to look into. Omega fatty 3 acids, fish oil. Check your blood work. Is your triglycerides high? Taking fish oil will drive it down. I mean, fish oil in general, just an amazing option, even if you don't have high triglycerides. A smart thing to do. Look at your B12. A lot of people have issues with total amount of vitamin. Zinc and magnesium, if you have a hard time sleeping, try something like taking chamomile tea and taking magnesium and zinc before bed. Very effective at helping people fall asleep. Getting rid of your phone, I'll go a little crazy here and I'll tell you my sleep time ritual. So I put my phone away at 7 o'clock at night. I start my day at around 6 o'clock, so just bear with me. The times don't matter, but the concept is what matters. So I put my phone away at 7 o'clock. I flip it on my counter. I put it upside down. I don't take it into the bedroom with me. It stays out of there. But in one way, shape, or form, blue light goes off. We try to turn off the TV at a set time before we're bed, not having any blue light. I take a hot shower before bed because what helps you fall asleep is your core body temperature decreasing. So by taking a hot shower, I artificially raise my baseline. So once I get out of the hot shower, it immediately drops down. And again, just not having any stress. And then I have my room blackout, and then the room and the temperature is 65 degrees. I have a super, super cold bed. I got it for my my 40th birthday, like a really, really cold bed. It's so nice. My bed is so nice that when I wake up and I use the restroom in the middle of the night, when I come back to get in my bed after using the restroom for 30 seconds coming back, I get in my bed, I'm like, oh, it feels so good. My girlfriend, she hates sleep. She's like, she's like an adolescent when it comes to going to bed, and she'll even get into our bed and go, oh my God, this feels so good. But the reason I say that is a cool temperature in your bedroom will help you fall asleep. So taking a hot shower, having a cool room is very effective at dropping you and helping you fall asleep. Staying asleep is a lot more complicated and it has a lot more to do with stress and things like that. But falling asleep, if you take a hot shower, and again, zinc, chamomile, very effective for helping you fall asleep.
Any good books you could recommend?
Yeah, the longevity book that just came out by Peter Atria, very good, phenomenally good. Fiber, the book by, I'll send you what's the gentleman's name? Let me grab my phone. I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you Peter's full name. Atria.